Well, hello everyone. Welcome once again to Luke Reacts to Stuff. And this week, I'm sure you have seen more and more of the Columbia University protest rallies, those spread all across the country. We talked about last week the the poison ivy leaks basically have given everybody a rash. It's a Hamas rash. It itches really bad and you really don't want it to spread because people die when Hamas spreads. So we need to get that under control. This week, I thought, we helped organize one of, I would say, the largest Christian majority rally for Israel and the Jewish people since October 7th. We did that this week. It was amazing. It was on Thursday. We had I was super excited. We were going to get 500 people. 10 times that showed up. We had 5,000 people, according to NYPD. They showed up for us, showed up for the Jews, showed up for Israel. There was one point where I was standing on the corner of 114th, looking down the whole block, and it was all our people. And then I was on the phone with somebody who is still at the front gate of the campus, and probably about 1,000 people. So it was like we surrounded the whole of the campus. We did we were like Jericho, walking the Israelites walking around Jericho. It was amazing. Okay, now while we were walking around, we were kind of we took me and some of the other guys, this guy Sean Foyt and Russell Johnson and Eric Metaxas and others who were walking all together. Grabbed the microphone, the bullhorn, and we yelled stuff. Okay. And there was a moment where, if you've ever been in that kind of exciting, very high energy environment, that you say what comes to mind. And so I did. Now, it could be that some of you out there have interpreted what I say and well, Luke, he must believe X, right? Well, Luke's beliefs are very complicated, as is Luke. So I thought that today on Luke Reacts to Stuff, that Luke would react to Luke because that sounds fun and funny. So my producer is going to play this, and we're gonna stop all the way through, and I'm gonna unpack what I mean. Would I say stuff that I'm shouting through a bullhorn? Okay, so
no more can Christians just stand by and watch evil take place. We must rise up in this moment, in this day,
right,
because we will be judged by how we react.
Stop. All right. Okay. No more can Christians stand by and let evil just run amok. That's what I said. Now, here's one of the things that I have picked up over the last few decades has been, it really does seem like there is, in a lot of Christian circles, the inability to call out evil as evil. There is a grave evil out there. And when I read scripture, the way that God dealt with injustice was actually through violence. What did he do to the people of Israel who embraced idolatry, who started to kill their own children, sacrifice them on altars? How did God deal with that? He exiled them. He actually, let Jerusalem get conquered, and they all went off to Babylon for 70 years. And then this remnant goes back. But if you see all through the scripture, that's how, all through the Bible, injustice is dealt with violence. And now I know there's a bunch of people out there who don't like, who would argue that about the myth of redemptive violence. But if you read the whole of scripture, it does sure seem like that is how God addresses grave evil. Okay. Now, I understand that, that it's very hard for a lot of us to handle because we have grown accustomed to a world that's really, for the most part, been peaceful. Okay, there's some great books. Once the Soviet Union fell and the Cold War was over, there was, The End of History was one book that was written. And it was like we have fought and argued and proxy warred with the Soviet Union for a long, long time, and we beat them. And so we're coming into this new age where we're going to forget violence, and remember war no more, to quote the Bible. And it didn't happen that way, right? There's stuff bubbled up all over the place. As Americans, we have lived really in a point of perpetual peace. And I think it's really hard for us to then admit when there is evil and what we're supposed to do about it. Now, I have this whole concept of how I think the role of government is to is justice, to bring justice into this world, and the role of the church is to advocate for mercy, right? So we do have we have a distinctive role. The church is never to bear the sword. I want to be clear on that. Nowhere in the Bible is the church being given the right to bear the sword. But when a Christian is in government, when a Christian is a police officer or a person in the military, and they are acting violently, they are acting under the authority of the government, and the government's job is justice. It says in Peter, the government's job is to punish evil and affirm what is good. And so punishing evil is the responsibility of government. Now, what is happening on the campuses of places like Columbia University, where you have students who are calling and celebrating Hamas, wearing Hamas-colored headbands and Hezbollah and that kind of thing, they are participating and celebrating the evil of Hamas. And it is right and good that Christians must call for the defeat and end to Hamas in the way that many Christians called for the end and defeat of Nazi Germany. Okay. I learned yesterday that the United Methodist Church is having their quadrennial, which means they meet every 4 years, and they have in 1940 they passed a resolution against the Allies attacking Nazi Germany. So they were on the wrong side of history then, probably on the wrong side of history on Israel and the Palestinian territories now. But that's not my point. My point is that most of the Christians in America, most of the Christians in the world recognize that Hamas and these terrorist organizations need to be confronted and challenged and defeated, because it doesn't stop with the Jews, right? The same ideology. Let's call it I mentioned this before, that there is this idea that the spirit of where Edom, the people of Edom, the Edomites represented the pagans, and Ishmael represents the Muslims. And when they come together against Israel, they form the spirit of Amalek. The Amalekites attacked the women and children when the Israelites were wandering in the desert. Right, that was the rebuke of them, was that they didn't challenge Israel from the front. They attacked and killed the women and children. So it is important, I think, that we recognize that it doesn't stop with the Jews. It keeps going. Places like Armenia this week, in Egypt, there was a village of Coptic Christians that was attacked regularly. In Nigeria, Christians are murdered, killed, their churches burned. They're burned in their churches, right? Like, the spirit of Amalek is there too, attacking the women and children. And I think it's important for Christians to recognize that we have to stand up to this stuff. It is not enough to sit by in our pews and just be like, oh, somebody else will take care of that. No, that somebody else is you, Christian. Okay.
Moment in this this day,
No,
because
quarterback.
we will be judged by
Yeah,
how we react in this day. And I will stand, and my friends will stand, and all of us will stand with
all right,
Israel
you can
and
stop.
the Jewish.
Hopefully that came through. All right. What I said there is that we will be judged by how we react to this day. Okay. And I think it's true. There's a small little book in the Hebrew Bible, what Christians call the Old Testament, that many of you perhaps have overlooked. Well, I consider, if you may, taking a look at it. It's called the Book of Obadiah. It's a whole chapter long, right? And it was written at just as the Israelites were being carried off in the Babylonian captivity. Okay, 586 BC is when we record that, and the rebuke, the rebuke that God has for the Edomites specifically in that book, and the Edomites are part of. The Edomites come into the story of the biblical story through Lot and Lot's daughters, but they, you know, the command that God had for them, or what God said to the Edomites through the prophet Obadiah. In verse 10, it says, because of the violence against your brother Jacob, you will be covered with shame. You will be destroyed forever. On the day you stood aloof, when strangers carried off his wealth and foreigners entered his gates and cast lots for Jerusalem, you were like one of them. That's to me a very heavy verse. Why? Because it's saying like when your brother, when your cousin, I don't know, when Jacob was being carried off, and Jacob represents Israel here, when they were being carried off into captivity, and everybody was picking over the bones of the Israelites, taking Jerusalem and doing casting lots for stuff and looting, you stood by, and they will be remembered no more. Now, Herod, as my understanding, Herod was the last of the Edomite line. Actually, included Herod, and they were no more. They are no more. They don't exist anymore. Now, in the Jewish world, Jewish sages have connected the Edomites with the pagans, particularly with Rome, and Rome. Which is what it's how it's connected to Herod, because Herod was kind of a regent of Rome, half Jewish, half Edomite, right? So, but Herod ended up, obviously dying. Herod, the line of Herod ends, okay, and so do the Edomites. But the spirit of the Edomites continues, and it is represented by the pagans. But as Christians, we are grafted into the story of the Jewish people. Romans tells us that. I would say we're more cousins than brothers. Okay, that's where I make that distinction. But I think that if we believe that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and He is rebuking the Edomites for watching the destruction of Israel, the destruction of the Jewish people, the destruction of the city of Jerusalem, and partaking in that God says to the Edomites, you will be remembered no more. You'll be done. I'm done. Like the line is cut off. There are no more Edomites anywhere. Okay. And so when I say we will be judged by how we respond to this day, I mean that, right? In the way that the Edomites were judged by how they responded. It doesn't matter how the Jews respond back to us as Christians. It doesn't. They could love us for being allies, or they could hate us. It doesn't matter. If we are going to be people who follow what God says, and we apply into our present day what we read in Scripture, then I think the application of the Edomites is that we don't stand by. We don't stand by and just watch everything happen, which is why I say that we will be judged. by how we react to this moment.
Jewish people forever, because that is what Christians do.
All right. I say there that I will stand, my friends will stand, and Christians all over the place will stand with Israel, because that's what Christians do. That's what I hope Christians do. Now, I recognize that, listen, there's a lot of Christians out there, a lot of ways that Christians engage Israel and the Jewish people. Now, what I'm going to say will bother everybody. Okay, it's to some degree somebody who's bothered by it, but I think that you don't have to support Israel theologically to be on board with supporting Israel and the Jewish people. Okay, there are millions of Christians. I would say at least, I think it's probably 60%, maybe 65% of Christians do not support Israel theologically, meaning that Israel and the Jewish people, it's going to take this hard, but just hear me out, okay? That they're not special in a in a unique way that is distinctive from, they're as special as, Fiji is to the Fijians and France is to the French. It's that kind of special, meaning they're not uniquely special, right? And that is, in essence, the essence of supersessionism or replacement theology, is that the promises of God got transferred, that were for Israel, get transferred to the church. Now, I don't agree with that theology, but it is the majority theology of Christians. But it doesn't mean that those Christians don't also support Israel. Because when you're polling Christians on support for Israel, particularly older ones, you're in the 75 to 80% range. The younger, when you get in your 50s, it drops to 70%. When it gets to people in their 40s, it's at 65%. But it never drops into the minority. So support's always in the majority, but it doesn't mean that the support is theological. It just means that they support it for a host of reasons. It could be because of they believe that it's still relevant politically, that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, that it's an ally, that they're leaning on to the remembrance of the Holocaust, but even not just the Holocaust, that Islam is against them, so Islam's probably against Christians too. So they're friends that way. There's a whole host of reasons. It's not as simple as people make it out to be. That's all I'm saying. And that because somebody believes in replacement theology doesn't mean that they hate Israel and the Jewish people. Okay. To say somebody is not special, here's what the anti-Semites do. The anti-Semites say that Israel and the Jewish people are uniquely special in evil, right? Like they're the most racist people. That's what the apartheid people say. Or, they're the essence of the colonialist, which is also what the anti-Semites say. Back in the day, if you were against Hollywood, the Jews run Hollywood. Or if you're against newspapers, the Jews own newspapers. If you're against, whatever you're against in this kind of apocalyptic way, somehow the Jews are responsible and the Jews own it. That's classic anti-Semitism. And that's saying that the Jews are uniquely special in the evil way. Now, there are those of us who think that Israel is uniquely special in a theological way and in a positive way. And I would say that, some might say that's Philos-Semitism. I'll take that. But it means that we just think that the gifts and callings of God to Israel and the Jewish people are not done yet, right? And we affirm that throughout the whole of the New Testament. It's not just Romans 9, 10, 11. I see it in Acts. I see it in the Book of Revelation. I see it in the Gospels. There's enough there for there's a lot in the New Testament that helps me to recognize that God is his covenants with Abraham and Moses and David are continuous. They are when God says that his covenant is forever, he actually means forever. So so I think it is imperative when I say that Christians do support Israel and the Jewish people, I mean it. And I'm speaking prophetically, I'm speaking hopefully, I'm speaking what I expect Christians to do. And in moments like this, when it doesn't seem that the support is there, I believe that the rally that we had last week, where we had the majority of the participants of the rally were Christian, I believe that that was a turning point in the relationship between Jews and Christians. I mean, it's already has improved dramatically since October 7th because other previous allied groups have not been as consistently supportive as the Christians have, which I appreciate, mind you, as the Christians. Wish the others had turned up too, but I'll take what I can get. And I feel it's my duty to help Christians. And like I said, we have an obligation to do this, whether or not it's reciprocated. Okay, this is not transactional. So, just so you know, like Philos means friend in Greek, and we are friends, and friends show up for friends. That's the idea we have. Now, I'm often asked, and I get this a lot. It was in the comment section on Twitter or X, in Instagram, same thing. What about the Palestinians? That is almost always the question. I remember actually when I first took this job and I came to New York, and I said, I went and joined a new church and was talking to the pastor. He said, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, I raise awareness about Christian persecution in the Middle East and encourage Christian support for Israel and the Jewish people." And his reaction was, "Well, what about the Palestinians?" And I said, "Well, what about the Palestinians? Are you aware it's illegal to convert from Islam to Christianity in Palestinian territories?" That the Palestinian leadership has said that a future Palestinian state will be free of Jews. And that if you write a Facebook post against Mahmoud Abbas, that you'll go to jail. So what about the Palestinians? I would advocate, I'm fine advocating on the basis of justice, but it needs to be on the basis of justice. Like if we want it, like we're advocating as Christians for the Palestinians, let's actually advocate for the things that matter to us. Okay? Now here's also the challenge right this second. I struggle with this a lot because right now the majority of Palestinians are either silent or affirming of what happened on October 7th. The polls that have come out have all shown support, majority support. We're talking 70, 75, and one survey was all the way up to 87% of Palestinians supported October 7th. I don't know how to support that. I don't know how to, it's really hard to separate that. Now, if you are, and I'll make it even more complicated, if the Philos Project, or leave aside even the Philos Project, me, Luke Moon, came out in support of a Palestinian who's currently living in either Bethlehem, Bet Jala, somewhere in the Palestinian, one of the Christian towns. I mean, even Taibeh or Ramallah. And I came out in support of that person and said, "Hey, you should listen to this person. It is likely that person will be attacked. His family will be attacked. He will be, he could get called a normalizer, or a traitor." And there was a couple months after the war started, there was a group of men in one of the Palestinian towns who were strung up on that they were killed and then hung from the lampposts. because they were accused of supporting Israel. They were accused of being normalizers. They were accused of being traitors. So I don't want that to befall any of the Palestinians that are friends of mine. So I'm not even going to name them. If you ask me, I'm not going to tell you. We're just going to have to wait a while, and it's not great. But there's one can imagine that there was Christians on both sides of Nazi Germany. There was, obviously even Christians that supported Hitler, or people self-identify as Christians who supported Hitler, supported the Third Reich, all that stuff. Okay, and I think they were wrong, and they were wrong. And how did the Christians in America support them? They didn't. For the time of the war, they didn't. And then when the war was over, the whole world got together and put together the Marshall Plan to help rebuild Europe, which included rebuilding Germany. Now, it was after having defeated the Third Reich. And so, what is the future of Gaza? I have no idea. What is the future of the Judea and Samaria, Palestinian territories? I have no idea. But in this season right now, support for the Palestinians by me has to be quiet, has to be secret. I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing. If other Christians out there want to support Palestinians, good. Just support ones that are about the gospel and not spokespeople for Hamas. Okay. And I think it's important that Christians do that. But also, here's the thing. Also, if you're going to support Palestinians, I really encourage you also to support Israel and Jewish people. I think that the Jews are special, especially special in God's redemptive plan. I think God has a purpose and a plan for all nations. All nations, according to Acts 17, God determined the exact time and place in which you should live. And he gave birth to other nations. I believe the message of the gospel is universal. I believe that the gospel is the good news of Jesus Christ, but also that it's carrying with it the blueprint of humanity that God gave to the Jewish people, how we should live together and how humans flourish. I think that's what we find. And when nations begin to read the Bible, some great books out there about how the Bible changed the world. Heck, Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. will tell you about how the Bible changed the world. And it is because it is the blueprint for humanity. And we get that through the Jewish people, and it went to the whole world, in part because of the Christian people. And I love all those people. But in this season right now, we are, we're doing what we can. We are not one of those. We're not going to fall into the trap of loving the Jew and hating the Arab, or love the Arab and hate the Jew. So there's enough of those people out there. We're not one of them. So my hope is that you'll when you hear me, you hear the best of what I'm saying here, and that is right at this moment. My hope is that it will change, and I can once again go see my friends. It's not that time right now, and it's another time, and we need to see the hostages returned. We need to see Hamas be defeated. That is my prayer. That's my goal, and so I hope you will hear me out when I'm unpacking some of this stuff. What I really mean when I say that I support Israel and Jewish people. I love Palestinians too, but I think they both have distinctive roles to play in God's plan, and that's good. All right, so this is going to be a shorter Luke Reacts to stuff, because I wanted to go into Luke Reacts to Luke. Hopefully you remember what the good points there. I do think Christians got to support Israel. I think we got to stand up. Your next opportunity, people, to stand with Israel and the Jewish people will be May 8th in Los Angeles. We will be in the USC, University of Southern California area, and we will be there at 5:30. I got ruined by the last rally. We had 5,000 people at the last one. Maybe this one we should double that. What if we had 10,000 people showing up to USC to stand with Israel and the Jewish people? Christians, spread the word. Get people out there. We need you to show up and get standing. Get those muscles. You know, I talk to some people sometimes, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't." They go to their first rally and never rallied in their life, and then they're like, "Oh, I could do this," and they'll do it again and again and again. So learn to use that muscle because we're going to need it. As you know, the pagans revival continues. The Christian revival needs to continue to grow to and be strong, and it includes standing with Israel and Jewish people. All right, that is me, Luke Moon. I reacted to Luke Moon. That's funny, and thank you very much.